Welcome to the Dice Gods. My name is Hydra, and today I am joined by somebody very special. If you have been looking out on the internet recently, you may have seen a flurry of activity from Warlord Games as they are about to drop the third edition of the behemoth that is Bolt Action. And I'm very lucky to be verbally joined today by Marcus Vine, who is the Warlord Games tournament coordinator, writer of the ubiquitous intel reports on third edition, and involved in the development process of the game. So welcome, Marcus. Hello.
Hello, thank you very, very much for having me. Absolutely lovely to be here.
Thank you for taking the time. It's much appreciated. You guys are pretty busy. I can imagine it's hectic times currently.
Yeah, it's pretty full on in a great way, to be honest. Obviously, yeah, it is a lot of work, launching a new game, functionally a new edition of such a big game for us. But it's really rewarding because all of the hard work that we're putting in, we actually get to see almost immediate payoff with things like the intel reports, and we see people really getting excited online. And also, we know that the payoff come sort of September the 26th is going to be even bigger. So it's in that real last push now, but we're getting there and really enjoying it.
Yeah. I mean, like you say, there's a lot of buzz going around, seeing it pretty much on all social media channels. I had a bit of a chat with the Reddit community. Shout out to those guys and asked them for some questions, which we're going to come to at the end of this chat. And yeah, they are very. They've got a lot of questions, but there seems to be some genuine enthusiasm, and they're intrigued. I think that would be the right way to. They'll probably flame me to Kingdom Come for saying that, but there seemed to be some enthusiasm and excitement for what you guys are cooking up. So, but first of all, we're going to do some basic things that we always do on the Dice Gods. The first thing I'd like you to do is introduce yourself, what you do within the team, what you were involved with third edition, if you can, and bits and pieces like that. So, who are you?
Yeah, so I'm Marcus, as you've already very ably introduced. I'm part of the Warlord Games marketing team. That's my primary role. My full job title is tournament coordinator and hobby content producer, and it's very much a split role. It's multifaceted. So on the tournament coordination side, my role is to support and enable community organizers globally to put on the very best events they can for our games and our community. So that's things obviously like advice and guidance, that's prize support, that's marketing support, and that's, a little bit of rules in there as well. And generally keeping competitive, organized play and events ticking over and growing and getting better and better every year. And that's been really cool to get to engage with people all over the world, people from countries where I didn't even know they'd ever heard of us. And like, hey, we've got a passionate fan base, place like Chile, Peru,
Okay.
genuinely. It's so cool to realize actually just how much the things we do impact people all over the world, which is awesome.
Yep.
The second part of my role is hobby content producer, and that's kind of a really sort of broad and slightly grandiose way of saying I'm the words guy for the marketing team. So anytime we need words, whether that's a lot of articles, whether that's product text, box text, web descriptions, anything that you might need words for, by and large, it's coming across my desk. Um, so, yeah, there's been quite a bit of writing going on lately. Um, I actually don't have a word count on this year yet because I've not looked. When I get to the end of the year and I look at my word count for the year, I suspect we're going to see a pretty ridiculous spike sort of a few months back leading up to now.
I can imagine. It's the curse of the word monkey, isn't it? It's just all the magic comes out the fingers, and then you get to the end, you're like, how much?
Yeah.
So,
If only I'd have put that all into a novel, I could be Stephen King by now.
before anyone thinks I'm being mean to Marcus by calling him a word monkey, I am a word monkey in my day job, so it's perfectly acceptable and perfectly fine.
There's some solidarity here.
There is indeed
And in
mutual
terms of
scars.
what I did and what I'm doing with Bolt Action Third Edition, so obviously as part of my tournament coordinator role, and just generally as a person, I'm a really big Bolt Action nerd. I love Bolt Action. It's my main game, and my sort of main love for it is also competitive play.
Okay.
I really love that side of the game. But simply sort of by dint of being the guy that's writing all the articles, the guy that is engaged with the bolt action community more than a lot of people. I'm trying to remember how long ago it was now. It's well over a year. But I was told, hey, Marcus, come into this office, don't tell anyone. Bolt Action 3rd edition is coming. And we want you to go and work with Alessio Cavatore and help him develop and playtest the game.
Oof.
So when I sort of finished jumping up and down and running in little circles and shrieking excitedly,
Yeah.
so what that morphed into, obviously, Bolt Action 3rd edition is written by Alessio Cavatore. Some people may have heard of him. He's worked on, just a few little projects here and
Small
there in the
guy,
past.
very vague bells. Yeah.
But obviously, jokes aside, absolutely legendary
Yeah.
war games writer and developer. So I was sort of sat there like, okay, wow, firstly, I'm going to go and work with Alessio. That's insane.
Yeah.
And secondly, I'm going to go and work on a new edition of my favorite game. This is mental. And yeah, it ended up being Alessio writes the game, wrote Bolt Action 3rd edition, but it's always very useful for him to have someone else in the room at the same time so that he can immediately go and playtest that idea, right? So you'd literally go, I want to try this. Marcus, let's set a table up and we'll go and playtest this and we'll talk through it,
Wow.
talk through how it feels for us, and go back and forth with suggestions. And sort of over as that developed, as that working relationship developed, I was able to kind of find myself suggesting back a few things, a lot of stuff that didn't get used, a lot of stuff that was, that fed into the big ideas machine, and a
Yeah.
couple of very little, very minor things that have come out that I'm really proud of. Obviously, the thing I want to state is very much that it was Alessio that wrote this game for Warlord.
Yeah.
I was very much there to help him and make that process for him as simple and as efficient as possible. And then when it came to kind of the proofreading side of things, I was sort of part of a team that went in and did that. And the same with things like developing the index, making sure that was all correct, going through future armies of books, which are now being worked on, again involved in the same way. So getting have that talk about the rules, have that be with Alessio while he's developing it, and then go away and help proofread it. And there's a lot of other people, particularly from our design studio and our marketing team, that have really, really stepped up when it comes to that proofreading, that editing stage. And we go back and forth with obviously our partners at Osprey who publish the books. And yeah, between us, that those books come out as good as they possibly can be. So it's absolutely a team effort. I'm a very small cog in quite a big machine, but I've been incredibly privileged to be sort of very close to it when it's happening.
That is so cool.
It's unreal.
That's just absolutely bonkers. That, yeah, to be working with a legend. I mean, you've had some influence there, obviously, by the sound of things. So anything that people hate, we should blame you.
Oh yeah, totally.
That's obviously Alessio wouldn't have done that blatantly, Marcus. But as an experience, that must have been to see the. I mean, again, the writery side come out, seeing the creative process of somebody like that, and seeing how that game develops and builds inside of. Bit jealous.
Absolutely. A complete. It was genuine. It's an honor to have been involved, to be able to say, in some small capacity, I helped. And yeah, as you say, to see what it's actually like, when you're growing up looking at other games and you're playing your favorite games, you're like, God, I'd love to be one of the people that, is involved in developing that.
Yeah.
And then sort of 20 years later to be stood there going, wow, I'm here. Don't mess it up.
I did a thing. That is phenomenal. Very, very cool. Slightly jealous, like you a bit less now. Moving on. So, because we're not at this point massively known for bolt action, though, it's going to be changing. There are a lot of people that look at the dice gods that watch our stuff, and they may not be 100% familiar, or they may have a preconception of bolt action and what it is, but I'm going to set you a challenge, and this is one I like to give to everyone that's involved in a specific game. Can you tell me in 30 seconds-ish what bolt action is and why people should play it?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I'll need the full 30 because it's actually really simple. Bolt Action is the game of World War II tabletop combat, platoon level, infantry and some support, and it's fast-paced, it's tactical. Most importantly, it's fun. That's why people should play it, because it is fun, the community is fantastic, and everything about the game is designed to maximize that fun.
Okay.
There we go. There's the elevator pitch.
Just like that. You can always tell when somebody works directly in marketing, 'cause it's like, it's this in a very small and tight focused box. But I'm going to drag you back a little bit. Platoon size, platoon level, what does that mean? How many miniatures are we looking at? What scale are we looking at?
So in terms of like physical scale, 28 mil,
Cool.
which will be familiar to, I'm sure, very many of us. And we have a pretty enormous and ever expanding supporting line of miniatures for Bolt Action.
And gorgeous line, I have to say.
They are fantastic. Thank you. I always like to, when I'm going through the website and doing bits and bobs for the writing job, the amount of times I'll just get caught and go, God, those are really nice models, aren't they? And the worst thing is that inevitably leads to me buying them. The amount of times I've written an article and been like, yes, absolutely, want to do that, gone and bought it, and then written the next article and gone, yes, want to do that, gone and bought it.
The idea is to have some salary left at the end of the month and not just pour it straight back into the company. I don't know if you're picking that one up.
But no, in terms of the scale, in terms of miniatures, typically you're looking at, say, between 30 to 50 infantry of various variety, anywhere between none and maybe half a dozen vehicles, a couple of artillery pieces, small ancillaries. So it's one of those games, you wouldn't call it a skirmish game, you wouldn't call it a warband game, but it's one that sits in that niche that, again, we all know and love from sort of years of playing the flagship games of various companies.
Indeed.
Most companies have got a game that sits in that niche. Bolt Action is absolutely ours.
Okay. And it's the table size is a 6x4?
6x4 standard for the normal size game. You can absolutely play on a 4x4 for smaller points games, but as soon as you get above at 1,000 points, you really want the 6x4 just to give you room to maneuver.
Okay. And that's 1,000 points of second or third?
Yes, is the answer, to be perfectly honest.
Okay, true for either. Good to know. Good to know. Good to know. Cool. Okay. So, now into the meat of this one. Bolt Action is moving into its third edition. We've said that a couple of times, but why? Why now? Because this has been, this edition is what, 12 years? Sorry, 8 years.
Yeah, there or thereabouts, and then the whole game as well is, you're looking at about 12, 13 years.
Okay, so it's this edition's been kicking around a while. Why now? What catalysed this? What made it happen now?
So in terms of why, like now, September 2024 exactly, I don't know. That is the plan. It's on the release schedule for them because that's part of the wider business plan. In terms of why it's time for a new edition, I think second edition had soldiered on really faithfully for 12 years. Excellent game, really great community, but it was a truly sort of fully mature game.
Right.
And I think, in any game's lifespan, you reach the stage when actually what's needed is that little bit of a bigger change, a new edition, so that you can go in and change and tweak some more fundamental things that you couldn't otherwise deal with, let's say, for example, with an FAQ or with, a new campaign book. And the big example of that, obviously, is the shooting phase change.
Yeah, that's how you throw a grenade into the middle of your community. But we'll come to that one. We'll come to that one in a minute. Okay, so it's just because I guess after a certain period of time, when the game has been ploughing on so long, things have changed, things have been added in. It needs just a bit of smoothing off around the edges and learning of lessons and stuff.
And different ideas come up and different trends occur. And people have always asked, when did third edition start developing? Well, really, it started developing, as I understand it, at the start of second edition.
Yeah.
Alessio will kind of go in. Alessio did a really good interview, which will be out in September's issue of War Games Illustrated, where he personally goes in and talks about things like this from the designer's point of view, from the guy who was there from the very get-go, you know, knowing that he was going to end up doing third edition probably in an amount of time, and that whole process. So I'd really recommend people to read that when it comes out, because I only joined the project sort of 1.5 years, maybe 2 years tops ago. It's a project that's been rumbling on for a lot longer than that. I joined it sort of when it hit that sort of terminal phase of, right, the words are starting to go on paper now, as opposed to being ideas that are discussed and stockpiled.
Gotcha. So when it's enough of a change to make it something cohesive, then you brought in
and you have all of these ideas, and some of them get kept, some of them get discarded, some of them get changed, but all of those ideas have been sort of coalescing for years.
Yeah, I can imagine, because you know, you get the various books that come out as well for the system, and over that period of time, that's going to change the way the game plays. You're going to see the way that it's always true. You see with any system, they throw it out into the community, and then all hell breaks loose, and everything, the wheels come off, everything catches fire, and it's all everything's changed. So yeah, I can understand that after a certain period of time, it's time to get the spanners out and ease those bits off a little bit. Yeah, good stuff. Keeps people on their toes. Stops people getting cocky. So how big, I mean, it's a subjective opinion, but how big is the jump from second to third? Are we going to see a lot of existing players having to relearn chunks of the rules, or is this just going to be a natural progression?
So, at its core, it is bolt action. It is still the game that was developed by Rick Priestley back in First Ed, that Alessio came and built upon and developed and even further. It is, for veteran players, still absolutely recognizably bolt action. It is the world's best World War II war game. It just got better, bluntly.
He says modestly, with no bias at all.
We're really proud of it. We're incredibly proud of it. But
Absolutely.
no, it honestly, in a lot of ways, for a veteran player, you will be able to pick up and play through. But by the same token, veteran players, and sort of count myself in this, it's often quite hard initially to jump over to a new edition unless you're in the right headspace, because your brain will fill in things that it thinks it knows. And actually, they've changed. So my advice to veteran players would be, play it through, but keep your rulebook close and just keep referring back for the first couple of times. And what you'll see is it's still bolt action. It still feels like bolt action, but don't take necessarily anything for granted from second edition, because it may well have changed.
Gotcha.
For new players, I would say this is the best possible time to join the bolt action community, because they're obviously, everyone is more or less in the same basket. You know, everyone is there with their rule books, looking at rules. Everyone is in that sort of mental space of learning the game. So it's a really good chance to sort of get in alongside people that have been playing for a very long time. And, you know, you're not having to worry about, oh, I lost that game because I didn't know the rules, or am I playing this right? Everyone's learning together.
Which is good. You've got the veterans there, you've got an established community that you can jump into. They're all sat there, and as you say, all in the same boat, which is fantastic. Best time to get involved. So, but what are your favourite changes that you can talk about?
My favourite changes, I think, definitely the shooting phase. It's one of the biggest ones, obviously, mechanically. It's one of the ones that's generated the most discussion. I really like it because it completely subverted the way I thought it would make me feel when it was first introduced to me. I literally remember I came into the room that we were using with Alessio, you know, this top secret sort of bunker. It wasn't a top secret bunker, it was an office in Nottingham, but
near enough.
Yeah, close enough. And he said, right, today I want to try cover saves. Let's see how this game feels with cover saves. And internally, I'm like, okay, okay, this is going to be really interesting. And yeah, I was just completely blown away by how well it achieves its objectives. And its big two objectives are, firstly, it simplifies things.
Hmm.
So in second edition bolt action, there's quite a few modifiers to remember and apply when rolling to hit, and they're all on the firing player.
Yeah.
Now, veteran players, absolutely, you can just learn those modifiers and you'll reel them off mentally, and it won't take you very long. But for newer players, and veteran players would get them wrong all the time as well, or it would
Yeah.
slow the game down. For newer players, that could be a little bit of a barrier.
Yeah, because
And
correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like range and whether you've moved, if second edition, I mean,
yep,
and pins as well.
yep, pins, but it's one per pin. Um, Experience level, is the target in hard or soft cover? Is the target down? Yeah, and a lot of the time you would end up hitting on sevens, which is a 6 followed by a second roll of 6,
Yeah.
which is basically you're not hitting.
Yeah.
Um, and what it also meant was that one player was doing all of that mental legwork and was also getting all of that engagement, while the other player would stand there and be shot at and be told, take these models off the table.
Yeah.
And what the cover save mechanic does is it firstly massively simplifies the to hit roll.
Yeah.
It brings it down. There is like one condition at the minute where a 7 is still needed, and that is if your unit is inexperienced, has moved, and has pins on it.
Okay.
Which is a pretty edge case. It's
Yeah.
going to come up, absolutely, but it's not the multiple times every single game this will come up. So it simplifies the rolling massively, which speeds up that to hit roll.
Hmm.
And it also brings the other player in because they're now thinking about what the cover is, which was originally baked into the second edition to hit roll. That's been split out to the separate cover save roll.
Hmm.
So while the attacking player is thinking about rolling their dice to hit, the defending player is already thinking about rolling their dice to save once the attacker's seen if there's any wounds caused. And it brings both players into the shooting attack. It means that it feels like you're saving your men
Yeah.
rather than my opponent just didn't hit them.
Yes. You're actively involved in the outcome of the combat rather than waiting to see what happened to
Yeah,
your dudes.
which functionally is more fun, and that's a point I'm going to keep coming back to is fun.
Yeah, I mean, no one likes to sit on the other side of the board while their opponent does things to them. It's not
No,
fun,
absolutely.
and
Um,
it's you can end up in that horrible situation where you just watch your army melt before you because somebody's on
yeah,
a hot run of dice and there's nothing you can do about it.
yeah, absolutely. And obviously, bolt action goes a long way towards avoiding, your classic first turn wipes or whoever gets first turn wins by having the order dice system. But yeah, even still, if your opponent gets 2, 3, 4 dice out of the bag when they really need them and just takes you out the game completely, it can be, there is that feeling of, I wish I was a bit more involved.
Yeah.
And so it takes a system that was good and makes it better. And I was originally like, oh, but the extra roll is going to slow the game down. And it really doesn't because there's 2 rolls that are simpler. People are thinking about them at the same time.
This is it. They're two different people doing it. So one person's just counting how many dice they need to make that save, while the other
Yeah,
person's doing some much more basic maths.
exactly. And
That's
so that's, I think, the change I'm sort of happiest with, most excited for. I think the other one, it's a toss-up. I'm going to say one you're going to have to find out about, which is close combat. I believe the final article on that drops like a couple of days after this goes live, so people won't have to wait long.
it. I love the way
But
you said. I think it does. You wrote it
well, it's more. I can't remember when you said you were putting this episode out.
a week on Friday, the 30th, the last Friday of September. Anyway,
Oh, 30th. In that case, it will be out, so your listeners
excuse me.
will know. But I'm going to let them get excited. But yes, close combat. That's going to be really, really, really cool.
Okay.
And the other one is the platoon selectors. Just that one of my and that's a sort of personal thing, as much as it is a seismic thing, because that was another huge change to the way army lists are selected. Is much more freedom,
Yeah.
and it's designed to put fewer barriers in the way of people having fun with the models they want to have fun with.
Yeah.
And for us competitive nerds, one of my favourite sort of bits of the hobby is listcraft, is theory hammer.
Yeah.
And suddenly we've taken a thing I knew really well and replaced it with this brave new world of loads of different options. And I'm like, oh, this is going to take up so many of my evenings, and I cannot wait.
So
Just sitting there and writing lists and talking them through with other people.
it's part of the fun. It is part of the fun.
95% of the hobby is talking about the hobby.
Yes, that. Yeah, I've got a YouTube channel. Of course it is. So for those that don't know, as I understand it, second edition at the moment, your lists are either predefined by the scenario, or you use a reinforced platoon, which has a sort of definitive structure.
Yeah, sort of. So there's three kinds of lists you'll see in second edition. The first is, yeah, as you say, this is the units that were here.
Yeah.
These are the units you are using. Those are quite rare. Those are very scenario specific, tend to pop up in campaign books.
Okay.
Then you have theatre selector lists, which also come from the campaign books. And they give you a bit more freedom, like quite a bit of freedom. But these are units that were here in this area at this time doing this thing. And you might get some restrictions on, I don't know, the amount of mortars you can take, but you might get to take a couple more tanks or something like that.
Okay.
But the kind of the core of bolt action is the generic reinforced platoon in second edition.
Yeah.
And that is, it's your 2 troops, 1 HQ, then a bunch of extra basic infantry options, then, 1 armored car slot, 1 tank slot, 1 artillery slot, 1 mortar slot, things like sniper, flamethrower,
Yeah.
anti-tank team. So it's kind of your infantry corps and one of everything.
Yeah. So if you wanted to take 3 tanks, you'd have to take 3 sets of
Yeah, exactly.
HQ and infantry times
Yeah,
2.
you'd have to take 3 reinforced platoons, or you'd have to go and play a theatre selector that allowed
Gotcha.
3 tanks, or play an armored platoon. And it was a little bit not awkward, but there was a bit of extra bookkeeping required
Yeah.
that got in the way of fun. And also for tournaments, a lot of the time, because what everyone's seeking in tournaments is balance.
Yep.
People are like, oh, well, no, you can't take theatre lists because they allow more powerful units. Or you can't take a generic reinforced platoon because it just allows you to bring sort of a soup list.
Yep.
So there was very much that thing of, well, actually, let's give people a more freeing structure. There still needs to be a structure there to guide people and to enforce the kind of core of the game.
Sanity is the
Yeah,
other word for it.
absolutely. But within that structure, there's more room to do what you want.
Yeah. So, as I understand it, there are now 6 different types of platoon that you can take,
Yeah.
and you have to take you have to take a infantry platoon,
Yeah, rifle platoon.
rifle platoon.
And that is very much, your 1 officer, your 2 rifle squads, a couple of limited support weapons, things like light mortars, a sniper team. But, there's no tanks, no heavy artillery, anything like that in there. That
Okay.
platoon then unlocks all of the other platoons.
Right.
So, and all of those platoons have more freedom within them. So where previously you could only take, 1 machine gun team, 1 mortar team, 1 anti-tank team in a generic reinforced platoon, now you take your rifle platoon, you take a heavy weapons platoon, and suddenly you're taking 2, 3 machine guns, 2 or 3 mortars, 2 or 3 anti-tank teams. Take an armored platoon, you can take, 2 or 3 or 4 armored vehicles. The same with artillery. It lets people bring more of what they want to bring without having to try and work around the generic reinforced platoon structure, which is anytime you want more than one, you've got to clone the whole structure.
Yeah. Yeah. I get you. Which is cool. I mean, we're going to come back to that one in a minute. That is cool. I mean, still talking about this new edition, from my perspective, one thing I was struck by as a newbie into this world, obviously I've been reading and learning and stuff. I played some Gates of Antares years ago, so I've had some experience there, but bold action has been something that has been on my periphery and I've yet to play. But one thing that struck me quite clearly is this edition seems to be smoothing off the edges. It seems to be taking away like the bits that are not fun, or a little bit more complicated, or a little bit more gritty, and making it a smoother gaming experience and more accessible.
Yeah, smoother, more accessible, more, again, I'm going to keep saying it, more fun.
Woo!
And that's the aim, right? When we play games, we want to have fun.
No, this is punishment. Feels like it sometimes with my dice, but anyway.
Yeah, punishment comes from the dice.
Yes, it does. Okay. Yeah, no, you're quite right. It should be fun. It should be enjoyable, and it looks, at the moment, from where I'm sat, that the third edition is going to be a much more enjoyable experience, and for new players, it's going to be a great time to get in with a much smoother system. So
Yeah, and none of this is to say that second edition was bad. We wouldn't be doing a third
no.
edition if second edition was bad. But we've taken it, we've listened to what the community wanted, and we've input kind of obviously our own ideas from Alessio and from other people, and gone, that edition was good. This edition is better.
Good. That's as it should be. You have a solid foundation, you build on that one.
Exactly that. It's continuing to build on the really solid foundation that Bolt Action First Edition put in.
It's always a worry, I think, when you see a established system where they kind of go rip with the old rulebook and start again. I think that's an indication of a fundamental problem within the system. So the fact that this is distinctly bolt action.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there's not change for change's sake.
Yeah, polishing rather than rebuilding, which is
The amount of times you'd be going through and you sort of look at something and go, has anyone ever complained about that? Have we ever thought that wasn't very fun? Does it change anything? Nope. Sweet. It's fit for purpose, in it stays.
yeah. It's always a good sign. It's always a good sign. So moving on from there, the current game has played around 1,000 points.
Yep.
Will it continue to be?
So, yes, but, and it was a yes and. Really.
Okay.
So, Bolt Action has always sat in what I would call that 750 to 1500 bracket.
Yeah.
So, you're playing, what you really want to be able to do is experience the whole flavour of the game and everything it's got to offer without it massively bogging down and taking over long and becoming heavy. And at 750 to 1500, you can achieve that. Now, one of the big reasons we see points moving around in terms of, it's now played at X or it's now played at Y, is mostly the competitive scene, right? People will say, we're going to limit the lists to this, or we're going to push the lists to that, because we want to see a change in what lists people are bringing.
Yeah.
And by and large, people that are playing for fun will, or playing narrative games, especially playing themed games, aren't necessarily so worried about the points. They will play the game that is fun for them. With that said, we have been doing quite a bit of playtesting at 1250 because this new selector allows you to bring in way more units. So you kind of want to give people a little bit more breathing room to bring the toys, right? There's no point saying you can go out and have fun and bring all the cool toys if you then say, but you don't have room to bring them. So 1250 game works absolutely fine. You've got room to mess around with whatever combinations you want and bring the cool toys you want. Equally, down at 750, you're still playing bolt action, you're still getting the full experience. It's a much quicker, very much rapid fire, very many fewer dice in the bag.
Yeah.
So the game runs through quicker. And up at 1500, that's where you can really bring the big guns out, the really big stuff.
Yeah.
And still have enough army around it to fully experience bolt action. It's not like you've turned up with a Tiger 2 and 15 guys.
Gotcha. So does that also mean that the points are decreasing as well, or has that not been touched?
There's been a points rebalance across the entire game. So the entire points matrix has been redone. And a lot of stuff has stayed the same. A lot of stuff has changed. Probably the biggest change you'd see will be in vehicles. So some vehicles that were felt to be undercosted and were taken all the time by everyone in the competitive environment have been bumped up a little bit, or they've had other changes to their abilities. And then the really big tanks that weren't taken very much, simply because, for example, at a Tiger 2, the
Right.
veteran King Tiger, 666 points in second edition. You got 2 MMGs and a super heavy anti-tank gun.
Yeah.
Now that super heavy that's 1 dice in the bag. For 666 points, you can get a lot of dice. You can get 10, 11, 12 dice out of that.
Yeah.
And that activates once a turn, and it fires a 1 shot from its super heavy AT gun.
Yeah.
And people were like, well, it's a ton of points to spend on, something that doesn't do as much as having 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 other dice does.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm in the game as much.
But plus,
So,
also, you're one bad roll away from that turn
yeah,
being a waste.
exactly. So yeah, some of the really big stuff came down in points, because it actually wasn't. The Veteran Tiger 2, if memory serves, came down 128 points, which we
Okay.
talked about in the vehicles article recently.
Yeah.
So it's still, 530 odd points. That is still a serious chunk of your army, but it's given you more room to play with things around it
Yeah.
and support it. And then, of course, the buffs to vehicles, things like anti-tank guns, +1 to hit on a fire order against vehicles.
Yeah.
It means that big tanks are better at what they were designed to do, which is kill other big tanks.
As it should be.
Yeah, so some vehicles have come down, some vehicles have gone up. Things like the classic, everyone talks about the Dakar Stuart, which is the early war Stuart, covered in machine guns. It was the automatic choice for Allied players. It was kind of, in a competitive environment, objectively one of the best things you could take for its points. And that was because it was covered in medium machine guns. It wasn't acting like a tank. There was something off with that. And the solution there actually turned out to be that machine guns on vehicles are too good. They're inappropriately good. The shots get halved, because that better reflects historically, and we are a historical war game, which is important to remember, better reflects historically their effectiveness, and also makes the game more fun for everyone when you don't have this 130, 150 odd point little death machine running around the table and
Going burped, basically.
deleting squads every turn.
I mean, I'm not seeing a problem with it, but yeah, I guess if you're on the other side of the table, it's an issue. But yeah, that makes sense. I think if you're seeing that as a really prevalent thing in the community and it's turning up with such frequency at tournaments, it does tell you that there's an issue there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was something that we identified in playtesting. It's quite funny, you'll sit there and you'll write a really filthy killer list at the playtesting stage. You go, oh, I'm going to smoke some people with this. This is going to be great. And then you stop and put your playtesting hat back on and go, why have I taken those? Why are they auto include in this list?
Why? Obviously.
Should they be?
Yeah.
No, that needs to change, or the points on that aren't quite right, or the rule on that isn't quite right. Why didn't I consider those at all? Why were they never in my mind? Because the points weren't right, or a rule wasn't right. And it all gets fed back, and it all makes it, you work it out.
So if there's things that were too good that have been, for want of a better word, battered with a Nerf bat just to calm them down a little bit, have there been things that have been given some love to make them more viable?
Yeah, absolutely. And that comes across in vehicles, particularly anti-tank vehicles, I think.
Okay.
People are going to see them being a lot more effective with the boosts to them.
Okay.
And some things, a lot of things, in fact, were made better by rules changing around them, more than they were by being given extra rules.
Okay.
So medium machine guns were one, right? They were a massive bugbear in second edition. One of the most iconic infantry weapons of the Second World War, and basically no one took them in second edition.
Okay.
Because they cost 50 points, and because the interaction of their rule and the sniper special rule meant snipers just deleted them.
Right.
And the fact that they were 3-man teams meant they didn't benefit from the small teams rule. They were just as easy to hit as a 20-man blob squad.
Right.
They weren't. The big issue with them wasn't that they weren't killy enough. It was that for 50 points, you got something that died way too easily,
Hmm.
and vehicles on machine gun vehicles, sorry, were undercosted.
Right.
So why would you ever take the guys on foot that die really easily when you could take the same thing in a more survivable vehicle
Yeah.
for relatively fewer points?
Gotcha.
And so the way they changed, the way they changed was snipers no longer automatically destroy them.
Okay.
The small teams rule went away completely. So now it's actually, that was part of the removing modifiers to hit,
Gotcha.
was getting rid of small teams. So they are now no more difficult to hit, also no more easy to hit than a two-man team.
Gotcha.
So that removes that reason to not take them. They did get an extra shot across the board,
That helps.
which, it's nice to have.
Yep.
But the crucial thing is they're now more survivable. So
Yeah.
that's the big reason why people weren't taking them removed.
Yeah. No, I understand. Yeah, I mean, like you say, when you're shifting all the sands around things, there's going to be things that come up to the surface all of a sudden because other
Yeah.
things that eclipsed them before are now not as good
And
or whatever.
there will be moments when you're like, hang on a minute. Why is this now really good? We literally didn't even look at this because we looked at this right at the start and went, yep, that looks absolutely fine. It's where it's pointed how it should be. Its special rules are fine.
Yeah.
Why is that now suddenly the auto include choice? Oh, because we changed that and we moved that and that went to there and that thread connected with that thread and that butterfly flapped its wings in Tokyo.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And just there's that constant cycle of checking. And every time you change something, you need to go back and check all the way down the chain.
Yeah.
What is this going to affect?
So, speaking of specific units which have been affected or will be affected by the release of Third, one thing that the guys over on Reddit, I forget who, apologies, did ask is whether things like medics are going to be majorly affected because they didn't, as I understand it, really have a showing specifically in second edition, will
So
they?
it's a really interesting one. Medics, chaplains, various sort of ancillary types. Some people absolutely swear by them in second edition. Personally, I run my US Marines. They never leave home without a chaplain. But with those, it's very much a case of what do you want that unit on the tabletop to do? So in bolt action third edition, pins are easier to accumulate. Having a chaplain around is going to be useful even if nothing's changed with them. And in bolt action third edition, obviously having a medic around, gives you that another chance to keep your guys alive. So it's one of those things where you have to balance the fact that these units don't do anything offensively, but they do help your army either survivability or defensively in terms of just being able to act. There's not really been any great changes to them.
Okay.
They were very much not a unit that we were like, nobody takes these guys ever.
Okay.
And it's not a case of people that don't take them, I don't think, don't take them because in a competitive environment they're really bad. People will not take them in some cases because they don't necessarily fit their build.
Right.
In a thematic environment, in a narrative play, in a general pick up for fun game, we tend to see them all the time. People, but it's what people want to bring. It's rare that people bring both. Sometimes they do, but we tend to see people that really like to bring a medic 'cause it's really thematic to have, your US infantry medic desperately sprinting across the sands of Omaha Beach, or you want the parachuting padre jumping in with your British Airborne,
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
Gotcha. So that is to an extent a difference between the incredibly focused competitive play and the more narrative historical
Yeah,
play.
absolutely. And again, the big thing: are their abilities fun and fluffy? Yes. There we go.
I feel like I should have a counter up here of fun. Ting,
Yeah.
ting, ting. So many times we say this during the course. Okay, cool. One thing that people are really keen on, and I think some of this has been discussed now, I've certainly seen some stuff being discussed in various locations on the internet, is whether there is now a schedule for the faction book releases and who's dropping when or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. There 100% is. And people can expect to see a roadmap, a genuine roadmap from us in the next few weeks, in the not too distant future.
Okay.
So there will absolutely be a release roadmap for your Armies of books, and that will actually have some other little details, potentially about kits that are coming out at the same or similar time. As part of that, it is a bolt action release roadmap.
Right, so you can start sort of bracketing out your salary
Yeah,
for every month of how much you need to partition to Warlord.
exactly. And again, it's that feeling of if people are like, oh, I really want to play this army, then they can look at the roadmap and go, oh, sweet. Well, we've got the get you buy lists in the rulebook and the PDFs for the minor nations
Yeah.
on release day, so I can start playing. But I know that in X quarter, when my army drops, I'm going to get all these new options and these new ways to build my force.
Yeah.
And I can start adding.
Okay. Which is, let's be honest, it's what it's all about. The
Yeah,
new
massive.
toys.
And no one should be kind of put off from starting the army that really appeals to them, because there's like, oh, but I don't know when its Armies of book comes out.
Right.
Because we'll tell you that, but also we're going to make it, and we are making it as seamless as possible for people to transition their second edition collections over, and as simple as possible for new players to join us.
As it should be.
Yeah, why would we put a barrier on people joining us? That's not who we are. That's not what we're about. We're really excited about this game. We want to share it with as many people as possible, and part of that is making sure that as many people as possible can come with us on this journey.
Absolutely. I mean, does that mean then that 100% of second edition units are coming to third?
I'm not going to say yes to that for the very, very simple reason that if I say yes to it, someone will be like, actually, what about this hyper-specific campaign book unit that, and I'm not joking here, there are some campaign book units out there that represent like 7 or 8 named dudes, or between 5 o'clock and 8:30 on the morning of a specific day, and they were on this street in this village.
Gotcha.
Attacking those 12 dudes. And because it's entirely appropriate for them to have rules in the context of their campaign book and to be used to play that real life scenario, then they stay there.
Yeah.
There's no need for them to come across.
No,
What
gotcha.
people can expect to see is much thicker armies of books, I think, in terms of, a lot of these units that in second edition were added for, say, for example, for all German armies, you got to add these units, or for all American armies, you could add this unit. Those that lived in campaign books, a lot of those will come into the armies of book. So it's an idea that you won't need to necessarily have the rule book, my armies of book, this campaign book, that campaign book, that campaign book, that campaign book. Now, if you're playing a really weird, particularly looking at competitive players, if you're playing a really, gnarly, I've cherry-picked the best possible unit, and I'm not, my fun isn't playing the historical game, I want to play aggressively and really competitively, then yeah, you might run into a few situations like, what do you mean this hyper-specific unit isn't included? But for the vast majority of players, that Armies of book is going to be their one-stop shop.
Okay, so does that mean that the campaign books are not going to be a thing then? Or are they coming, but... So back in your corner now, I'm painting you smaller into a corner.
The campaign books remain absolutely
okay.
awesome sources of scenarios, hyper-specific unit rules, and research.
Gotcha.
There's obviously the Armies of books are being replaced. They're going away.
Yeah.
The campaign books are staying because the authors put an enormous amount of work into making those books as good as they possibly could be, with the historical side, with the scenario side, with all these fun and fluffy units. And because, there's no new like characteristics in bolt action. You know, we haven't added weapon skill, for example, or anything like that.
Yeah.
All of those units, you can still play the game with them in the context of their campaign book, but that's where they live, if that makes sense.
No,
So
absolutely.
they're not included in wider third edition play. They live in the campaign books. You use them to play the scenarios from the campaign books, and you take the campaign books as what they are, which is really amazing source books to play specific historical campaigns and engagements.
That's really, I mean, it's nice to see a company that is going to a new edition and not saying all of that paper and cardboard that you bought from us at X per book. We're just going to give you some new ones with a whole new set of rules. You know, that's
Well, and the other thing is, it would be kind of pointless because a lot of those units that people liked from campaign books have come over into the armies of books. So
I get that.
you know, a lot of those units have moved over, and the fluff and the scenarios and the history and all the great artwork
Yeah, it's not going
is
anywhere.
what is what people really latch onto in those campaign books that aren't looking at it on a, oh well, we want to find out what the next really competitive unit is.
I get what you're saying with that side of things, but it's nice. There are companies within this hobby that exist in a very cynical approach towards the wallets of their gamers. And a new edition means we can say the same thing we sold you again, just with new numbers in. So it's nice to see
Yeah,
that not happening.
as I say, it's about fun for us. It's about fun. It's about treating our community with respect.
Yep.
Because they treat us with respect.
Yep.
And we know that we could make the the best game that has ever been made. No game will ever be better than this game we could make. But if nobody plays it, what's the point?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's how it should be. Community first.
We want to grow the community with third edition, not make the entire community take a step back.
Yeah. Well, there's a novel concept. Encouraging people to play by not ripping their wallets out of their pockets. I don't understand. So confused. Okay, cool. I've also seen, actually, speaking of those faction books, that it's been indicated that most of them, not all, but most of them will be out in the first 12 months. Is that something you can confirm or deny?
I genuinely can't say anything about that at the minute. Keep an eye out for the roadmap.
Because
that I couldn't let you have it all your own way.
No, I tried, guys. I tried.
It was a valiant effort. It was a great little slide in there.
Around the corner, a couple of compliments, and then he didn't fall for it. I tried, guys. I did. Okay, cool. So that also ties back into, as well, minor nation books, the Commonwealth and
so what people can expect, and we've talked about this a little bit already, but I'm happy to sort of reiterate it here. What we can expect on launch day is, in the main rulebook, are your get you by until the main book, until your Armies of book comes out lists for the USA, Great Britain, Germany, Imperial Japan, and the Soviet Union.
Okay.
AKA sort of the core five, right? The main five belligerents.
Yeah.
And then on release day as well, what will also come out are a series of PDF lists that do exactly the same thing as those lists in the rulebook do. They get you by until, and they let you start playing right away and carry you through to the Armies of book coming out for all of what we call the minor nations. Okay. So basically, the situation we really wanted to have was, Wargamer X goes to bed on the night of the 25th, having played a game of 2nd edition with their army.
Yeah.
And then they wake up on the morning of the 26th, and the 3rd edition rulebook has landed on their doorstep. And then on the evening of the 26th, having shuffled around their force a little bit to make sure it's compliant with the new platoon structures, they can play their first game of 3rd edition.
Gotcha.
So their collection isn't suddenly invalid. They might need to add a few bits, particularly things like officers. We know people are going to need to add a couple of those to most armies.
Yeah.
But that's not a whole new army. That's a few models. And then once you play your first few games with your existing collection modified, you're going to realize that, all right, actually, in this edition, I'm going to want some of that. I'm going to want less of those, more of those. I'm going to want to add this thing that I'd never previously considered. And what you will find, I think, is that you're going to want to have more of a collection instead of one army, because you're going to want to be tailoring, I think, a little bit more towards, I want to kind of play this game. And I know that my regular opponent at the club brings loads of tanks. So I'm either going to think I'm going to bring a bunch of tanks of my own, or I'm going to bring a heavy weapons platoon loaded up with anti-tank, or an artillery battery with anti-tank guns, that sort of thing. You're going to want, because there are more options and more ways to build the force, you're going to want to have that stable a little bit more.
More stuff.
Yeah. So that's kind of the goal with the get you buy lists, with the PDFs, and with the things for the minor nations. Because crucially, it shouldn't really matter what army Wargamer X plays. They should be able to rock and roll pretty much from the get go.
All of them. That's impressive. I have to say, a day
Again,
one drop
I'm not going to say 100%
I know,
all of
I
them,
know.
for the very simple reason that there'll be some flavour of bizarre partisan that I'd completely forgotten existed, that I've never seen played. That's like, you can just use a generic partisan list for them. Come on.
Well, the two big ones seem to be Finland and Italy. Those seem to be the ones that people are very kind of like.
Both available day one.
Just like that. Just like that. That's bravo.
Nice, not nice, easy one. I thought you were going to ask about some really obscure kind of Chinese partisan something.
Well, it's funny you should mention that.
The obscure Chinese partisans. What of them?
On Wednesday, July 29th, 1944. No, it's. I mean, looking at like Reddit and stuff, the things that people are talking about is Italy is talking about Finland and these kind of places, and being kind of like, when, what, how?
Absolutely, and I think Italy's particularly prevalent in the discussion, because obviously Italy for a long time, especially in the competitive sphere, but even in the narrative gaming, the pickup gaming sphere, Italy, and it's important to remember that other than Germany, everyone else was using an Armies of book from first edition.
Right.
Italy had some national special rules that, to be honest, needed improving. And, they weren't often conducive to an enormous amount of fun. So 12 plus years of hindsight, we could have done those better.
Lessons learned.
And we did, with Soft Underbelly, the campaign book. And then Case Blue is the really big one that really brought Italy into line. And the competitive players loved it because Italy suddenly had some really powerful units, and sort of players that wanted to play thematically loved it because it was Italy more appropriately represented, and the pickup gamers loved it because suddenly their Italians didn't start running away after your opponent got a dice advantage on you. So Italy ended up in the zeitgeist, I think, because Italy got a big boost right at the end of second edition. And I think people, quite rightly, want to know that Italy won't go back to square one with the release of third edition. Absolutely not. The good thing with doing all of these get you buy lists is we're acutely aware that they're going to have to last for a length of time before they're replaced.
Yeah.
So they better be ready, and they better be fit for purpose when they come out. So a lot of work has gone into that,
which is good to hear, and I'm sure there'll be quite a few players that will be more cautiously optimistic to hear that than not.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, again, it's the thing of, we want you to have fun with the models that you've bought from us, and we want you to keep having fun and keep buying models from us. And we want you to keep being part of this community and going on this journey with us as we build Bolt Action up and up and up.
Yeah.
We don't want at any point to drive someone away from the community because the toys they really want to have fun with, we've made not fun. We don't want to do that.
Gotcha. Yeah. It's a thoroughly grown up and mature approach to developing a war game, and I'm lost. No, I mean it's rare. It's rare. It's very few companies that take that approach. There's more often than not you see the Anyway, we know what I'm talking about. We're not going to talk about that. So, jumping track again. Now we've made everybody really happy. With Bolt Action having this thriving tournament scene, I mean, it was just the GT.
Yes, we just had a couple of weeks ago the Bolt Action Grand Tournament at BritCon.
Yep.
Really, really good. Biggest one post-COVID.
Got one
Really
coming
great
up
to see.
as well.
Yes, so we're going to be at the London GT,
Yep.
which is a pretty prestigious event in terms of the amount of different game systems that are represented there.
Yep.
And I think it's really time for Bolt Action to step up and be counted among these top flight war games, because that's what it is. I'm going to keep saying it. It's the world's greatest World War II war game. And we want to show that off, and we take pride in it.
Yep.
And so being at the London GT, what we're doing is it's actually 2 days after the release of 3rd edition. So rather than make it a 3rd edition event where everyone's got to desperately try and cram and remember the rules in 2 days, it's going to be a farewell to 2nd edition event. Bring your old favorite army down. Bring the army that you wanted to play but never got a chance to. And we're just going to have a knock around, celebrate Bolt Action, show it off on great tables. We've been sponsored by MicroArt, by Hornby, and in partnership with our sister company Skytrex. The tables are going to look amazing. And show it off to all these other gamers. Be like, why aren't you hanging out with us and having a great time with these awesome models on these awesome tables and these awesome people?
You could be with the cool kids.
You could be having fun right now.
And to be fair, the micro art terrain is
it's a game changer. It's an absolute game changer. Since we started carrying it, that genuinely I'm like, why would I use another terrain provider, especially for tournament buildings? And there's loads of really great ones out there, but I think the thing MicroArt have got right now is it's just there, it's ready.
Yeah. Put it together, playable interior, playable exterior, goes together beautifully. They're robust when they're together as well, so you can't like knock the top floor off. It sits, it's secure. It's just
we were super excited when they agreed to come on and sponsor us. But yes, so to go back to the original point, obviously competitive scene, we've just had the GT. The LGT is coming up, which if you're in the London area, 28th, 29th September, absolutely come down. I'll be TOing. You can come and say hi to me and point and laugh at all the things I've said on this interview.
And ask awkward questions.
Yeah,
all
absolutely.
Of the awkward questions.
Well, the game will be out by then. I can just hand them the rule book and say, there you go.
Yeah, but they can blame you for the stuff they don't like. It's a perfect opportunity.
It's a perfect storm, yeah.
I've had this 48 hours. It's obviously broken. Your fault.
Yeah.
So, but with that thriving tournament scene, how will 3rd edition impact that? What changes do you think?
So, I think, firstly, it's blown the meta completely out of the water. The old meta is dead. Long live the new meta. We've seen as soon as the machine gun half shots on vehicles rules came in, the tournament community unanimously stood up and went, the age of Daka Stewarts is over. And frankly, good riddance to the bloody things. They were a nightmare.
You made them. It's your fault.
Not guilty, girl. Before my time.
Now suddenly he's not involved. You notice that?
Yeah, I know. But no, so in all sort of joking aside, the first thing we're going to see is a seismic shift in the meta. And that's hugely exciting. That is a good thing for the tournament community. Because what a tournament community for any game thrives on is freshness, is innovation, and is change, right? The worst thing that can happen to a game in a tournament sense is it becomes stagnant and there is one best way to win.
Yep.
Because then that's all you see.
Yep.
And we were really, I think with 3rd edition and 2nd edition, we changed at just the right time. Because 2nd edition didn't get stale. We went through phases. We were like, we saw barbecue lists, which is as many flamethrowers as you can, a few years back. They were the meta. They were absolutely, this is the best way to win. You can't lose if you play a barbecue list. Just take 6 flamethrowers and you'll be fine.
A very good friend of mine, Danny, raved at me for quite some period of time about setting fire to things with a barbecue list.
Oh, Danny from Tabletopper.
The man himself.
Lovely dude. Really good guy.
He is indeed.
But then sort of along came bamboo spear hordes and sort of close combat focused armies. And everyone's like, these are the best thing. And then along came Daka Stuart and Gurkha paratroopers, and it was still evolving.
Yeah.
But you could see people were starting to really nickel and dime and pare it down.
Yeah.
And that took them 12 years.
You made him work for it.
That took 12 years of the very best players in the world really going hammer and tongs at this system.
Yeah.
And that was with a pretty comparatively restrictive selection system.
Yeah.
Now with the new selectors
Good
and
God.
the new point systems and all of the changes, it blows it wide open, and it opens the gate for absolute creativity and just ideas. I don't expect the meta's going to settle down for about 2 years. And I predict we're going to see 8 or 9. This is the best way to win. I've broken the game. Absolutely. If you play like this, you just win Bolt Action 3rd Edition.
Yeah.
It's unbeatable.
That'll be the first year only.
I think we're going to see 8 or 9 of those in those first couple of years.
Yeah.
As people get their heads into the game, they get it around the game.
Yeah.
And that's a really good thing for the competitive community, because the game isn't predictable. The game isn't boring. And for those of us for whom thinking about the meta, about trying to subvert the meta, about playing off meta deliberately, for whom List Hammer is fun, that's incredibly fun. So for the competitive side of the game, there's so much opportunity to enjoy ourselves, and I'm so excited for it. At the same time as the vast majority of our players, who are not hardcore competitive players, are enjoying the fact that it's a smoother game. It's a more fun game for everyone involved. It's a slicker game. It's a game that gives them more freedom to play what they want.
Yeah.
And then there's this little subset of us off in the corner that are like, that's awesome, but look at this as well. This is so cool.
Happily putting together the filth list and trying to break everything while
100%.
not really succeeding, hopefully. Cool. Okay, so that leads into we've talked about the new faction books that are coming. Are those, when those faction books drop, what have you done to ensure that we're not going to see power creep inside the system? Because that's always the risk.
By and large, write them at the same time.
I mean, they do it.
So the big thing with power creep, with codex creep, with whatever you want to call it, is when books are written, they're written a lot of the time when they're written years apart. They're almost written for different games, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So one book 2 years down the line will be written with lessons and concepts that book written 2 years before didn't necessarily have.
Yeah.
And it becomes a little bit of, you need to have the newest to have the best.
Yeah.
Because all of these are being functionally written as one. It's a gargantuan team effort. It means that we can go, actually, no, we can't put that in Armies of the Soviet Union because we said that for Armies of Germany and we were thinking about that for Armies of GB. And if we do that, then that's not as good and that's way overpowered.
Yeah.
So it's very much that balancing act. And then in terms of, obviously, the books are coming out sequentially. So how do you ensure that, if Soviet Union comes out before Britain or whatever, the Soviet Union aren't at an advantage over British players until the Britain book comes out.
Yeah.
That is obviously a bigger challenge.
Yep.
And the biggest thing we can do there is be responsive and listen to the community. And we can, and if it's like, hey, it's a quarter until this book comes out, it's chill, don't worry.
Yeah.
That might be one thing. Whereas if it is going to be a little bit further down the line, okay, do we need to address something in an FAQ or an errata? Does something need to change? And that's not something we've agreed at all. That's not something we've set in stone. It's something we're mindful of. It's something that we're aware, we're agile, we're ready to respond to that.
Cool. Okay.
And a lot of that is going to be sort of my finger on the pulse and my colleagues' fingers on the pulse in other countries, looking at, hey, all the people are, all my trade accounts for our trade guys, all my stores are saying that they're only seeing this, people only want to buy this, or,
Yeah.
All these guys at a tournament all took this. Okay, maybe we need to look at that.
Yeah, yeah. Being conscious of what's being played and what's being bought gives you the insight, doesn't it?
But crucially, the people that affects the most are your competitive players.
Mm-hmm.
The main thing to ensure is that it works for everyone.
Yes. Yes, very much so. It's crucial. I mean, competitive players are often the most visible and the most vocal in a community.
And we love them.
Yes, it's how they should be. It's exactly how they should be. It's what you'd expect. But
Yeah.
they don't tend to be the bulk of any given community. So it is important to have a mechanism by which you can track how it's going for the rest of everyone else as well. And
Yeah,
absolutely.
And sometimes developments will be led by one section of the community, sometimes they'll be led by another, sometimes they'll be led by us internally and business reasons. It's all about balance, right?
Yep. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Completely agree. Cool. That is the stuff from me. The next stuff that I've got, and we've touched on some of this, I'm going to put them out there anyway, and
Yeah.
we'll walk back through it. But I asked the Reddit community of Bolt Action for some questions. They had many. They had more than I anticipated.
Surprisingly gentle, though. It was thank you very much for the friendliness and for you for filtering, I suppose, some of them that were a little bit more direct. But we love the passion. It means people care.
And this is the I mean, the only downside from my perspective is that this idiot has read it on his phone, and therefore my phone vomited for the next 24 hours after asking the question.
Yeah, that was a poor life choice.
It was fine. I didn't need sleep. Beep, beep. But, so first of all, as Marcus said, thank you so much to all of you guys that took the time to write questions and questions and questions. That was phenomenal. What I did is I filtered through that and tried to group ones together and all that kind of things, just to try and pick some of my favourites. Some of we've already covered. But let's run through this quickly now. So the first one is there a timeline for when different nations, rules and characteristics such as villains are coming? We've discussed that one. Next year, well, they're dropping on day one.
Yes, there is a roadmap, and yes, get you buys for the minor nations will be on day one.
And no, he won't tell us what the new stuff coming, when that's happening. We have to wait. Anyway, we've sort of touched on this one, but maybe we'll go a little bit deeper. I'm going to read this verbatim because I wrote it very carefully.
Ooh.
Many in the community didn't see the need to rework the shooting mechanics. Why was the change made? What was the thought behind that? And Bolt Action now having covering saves, this to many feels unrealistic. What's the thought process there? And what would you say to players who are not fans?
It's a really, really good couple of questions, and I can see the kind of players that would ask those questions, and those are experienced players. Those are people that have been with us for a long time. So firstly, thank you very much for being with us, and thank you for coming with us on this journey. So the rationale behind the change, we discussed that a little bit earlier. It's functionally fun and player inclusion in that turn, in that action. And while the underlying maths doesn't change particularly significantly, the gaming experience does. So it feels smoother, it runs quicker, which is huge, especially when you're pressed for time. If you're trying to play after work and you don't want to get home too late, or if you're trying to play at a tournament and you've got to cram those rounds into 2-hour, 15-minute slots. That's huge. And it also makes it easier for new players. It makes it slightly more intuitive and more fun, less disengaging for new players. And new players, just as much as existing players, are the heart of this hobby, right? As soon as you come in, whether you've been here for 15 years, whether you've been here for 15 minutes, you're equally as valued to us. We care about your fun. So that's why the change was made. In terms of cover saves being unrealistic, there's kind of two answers to that. One is that Bolt Action is a World War II war game. It's not a World War II simulator. So, in that there are a lot of things in bolt action that are below the abstraction layer. Does a Lee Enfield firing 303 British have the same ballistic performance at 500 yards as a Gewehr or a Kar 98K firing 8mm Mauser? No,
No.
it doesn't. But in bolt action, they are both rifles. And it's abstracted for simplicity and ease of gameplay.
Yeah.
In the same way that veterancy, it's an abstraction of a variety of features that make a soldier more or less likely to survive their combat. Things like, I've been around a time or two, I know not to poke my head above the parapet because there might be a sniper.
Yeah.
So cover saves, absolutely, they're an abstraction. Absolutely, they're quote unquote not realistic. But this is a game. We make dice rolls to represent the randomness of things happening in real life.
Yeah.
And as for what I would say to those players, play it. I promise you, no matter how much you think, I'm going to hate this, it's going to slow the game down, it is going to, completely change everything and make it feel all wrong, I promise you, just play a couple of games. Don't think about it too much. Play a couple of games and then evaluate how that felt.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was in a very similar boat. When it was first sort of said, we're going to try this, I was like, okay, I'm not sure about this. And then having played it a bunch, and then gone back and helped TO at the Bolt Action GT for 2nd edition, I was like, compared to 3rd edition, 2nd edition shooting feels so clunky now.
Right.
So once you've played it a couple of times, once you've kind of got over that immediate visceral reaction to it, which I had as well, and you give it its fair shake,
Yeah.
it's one of those things where I can talk about it till the cows come home, but I promise you it's so much more effective to go out and play it and see it for yourselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's a universal truism that wargamers hate change and they hate things staying the same.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I count myself in that group. It changed, I hate it. It stayed the same, I hate it. We're never entirely sure, but as you say, I think the more that I've looked at it, the more that I've seen and thought about it myself prior to even to speaking, I can see that level of interaction is an improvement from the gameplay experience of both players.
Yeah.
And less things to remember, much as, experienced veteran players can trot out all the modifiers to a shot in 2nd edition.
And that's why I say that you can really tell those people that were having those questions had been with us for a while. Because I was the same. I was like, but I already know all the modifiers. I can just bang, 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 bang.
Yeah.
But then I remembered what it was like when I was first learning the game.
Yeah.
I was like, and I still make mistakes. I was still finding myself making mistakes, even at sort of, tournaments playing some very top level players, being like, is that or is that?
Yeah. That happens. I think anything that makes the game flow and the game experience better is a good way forward. But as you say, the knee-jerk reaction to I don't like it should be tempered with I'll try it and then I'll give an informed opinion because
absolutely. Not telling anyone they have to love it or but
no.
just give it a fair shake, and I think you're going to be really pleasantly surprised because I was.
Yeah. Oh, I see that. So, for our next question, any new rule set is fantastic, and then you put it in the wild, and everything happens. Players happen to it. That's hundreds of games over many days happen, and you start getting feedback. Is there a mechanism for balancing and communicating those balances to the community planned, in place, prior to the launch?
So as we said, we're going to be very agile. We're staying agile with responding to feedback and absolutely encouraging people to feedback. That's going to be part of the key messaging that people can expect to see going forward is, hey, if you've got feedback, tell us. If you've got a question, ask us. So yeah, absolutely. we can pretty much guarantee there's going to be stuff that we just completely didn't see in a month of Sundays that someone might well find out on like the first day.
Yeah.
Because they just happen to roll the right combination of dice with the right combination of units that they already had in the right situation. And again, butterfly flaps its wings in Tokyo.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. But
So, yes, the plan is absolutely remain agile, listen to the community. If something is genuinely flagged up as, okay, this is affecting a lot of people's fun, then yes, we're prepared to react. We're prepared to communicate any changes that might need to be made.
so how can players communicate that? Is that social media, email
So,
addresses, what?
the easiest way right now is info@warlordgames.com. That's our big customer service inbox.
Yep.
However, we are looking into ways that we can make that even easier for people. So, and again, that's one to keep an eye out for. That's not an immediate term.
I'll watch
That's
the space.
Yeah, it's a little bit further down the line. You know, if we decide the best way is to stay emailing us in, then it might stay like that. If we think there's another better way, then we might go a different direction. But people will always be able to talk to us.
Yeah.
And there aren't that many of us at Warlord Games. You know, it is not like you've got to go through layers and layers and layers of people to get to someone who knows the answer to your question.
Yeah. Or is the position to affect change if necessary.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, which is the important thing. It's good. I mean, it's good that there is, prior to launch, a willingness to be open to feedback and to take that on board.
Yeah, there's no sort of corporate arrogance that, oh, we've made a perfect game. No, anyone that complains is misguided. Absolutely not. There is always room for improvement. Satisfaction is the death of desire, and you should never stop striving for perfection.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. Next one is, the word is that tournaments are going up to around 1,250 points. Is this something you expect and design for? Yes, you already said that one.
Yeah, basically. To sort of further on to competitive, people can expect to see in September an article touching on, it's from myself, touching on the philosophy of competitive pack designing and messing around with a rule set to produce a good competitive environment. And there's a really basic, here's my start for 10. Finger in the wind, start for 10. Try this as your tournament pack if you're at a loss as to what to play.
Yeah.
And tell me how it does. But what's also crucial in there is the very explicit permission to go forth, mess around with this game, take as much or as little from it as possible and as you want, and make events that work for you and your players. And we will support you 100%.
As it should be. Thing of beauty. Cool. This one, I think I already know, but we're gonna dive into it. With the changes in points and game size, do you expect to see more large tanks in competitive games, and will their rate of fire improve or change to make them worth taking?
So rate of fire improve? Not really. We've not made it so that an anti-tank gun shoots twice or anything like that. As we discussed before, yeah, we've made them more effective for the points that you pay in cases where that needed to happen. In some cases, they just got cheaper. In some cases, they just got better. In some cases, they got cheaper and better.
Okay.
Do I expect to see more heavy tanks in competitive play? Again, this is a complete finger in the wind. I don't think so.
No.
I think you expect to see more classic mediums, which you also didn't see very many of in late second edition. T-34-85s, late model Panzer IVs, Shermans, things like that. I think there's more of a niche for them now. And the really big, heavy stuff, because it is still a serious investment, I don't know whether that is going to be like an immediate competitive option. Are there ways to play it competitively? Absolutely. And I really look forward to seeing people figure those out.
Yeah.
But is it the most obvious option? No. There's still a lot of points. I'm still thinking, right, I can spend 400 odd points on this really big tank, or I could spend 400 points on 10 dice worth of other stuff. Personally, as a competitive player, I'm going to the other stuff.
Yeah, more stuff is good. But it sounds like third edition is going to be an edition of more armor. It's going to be more viable to bring.
It is more viable and easier to bring more armor, but crucially, it is also equally more viable to bring things that counter that armor. Whether that's other armor, whether that's anti-tank guns, whether that's infantry anti-tank weapons.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, you could. And this, this, I think it's a question that people are going to ask a lot of. Oh, what if I just bring loads of tanks? What if I just spam tanks? And the counter to that is, for less points than you can do that, I can bring loads of bazookas.
It's the rock, paper, scissors situation, isn't it?
Exactly, and that is really cool because I think what we're going to see is people trending and skewing their lists in directions that suit their play style.
Yeah.
And then because you don't know what your opponent's list is in a competitive situation, you could end up with a mirror match, you could end up with a hard counter, you could end up with a perfect, easy counter. So yeah.
It's I think with the way that you guys have changed the way that the lists are going to go together, there's going to be a greater variety, a greater spread of lists out there, and so
Absolutely. Yeah. The core of every list is going to look very different, I think.
Yeah.
Or rather, the core will always look the same, which is at minimum 1 officer, 2 squads.
Yeah.
But you won't see every list having the same basic core of functionally probably 3 infantry squads, 1 medium howitzer with the cheapest tow you can get, a sniper team, an anti-tank team. We won't see that.
No.
We'll see the 1 officer, 2 squads, and then this guy's bought 4 tanks. This lady's bought 5 artillery pieces. Let's rock and roll. Let's go.
This is making my inner Stug addiction have a real problem.
Oh, you're right. That Stugs have gotten a nice little points reduction because they're supposed to be the economy version of a tank because they don't have a turret. In second edition, that wasn't stunning. That wasn't stunningly well represented in their points cost.
Yeah.
That is now better reflected in third edition.
My Stug addiction is itching. This is entirely your fault. Explain this to my wife.
Choose the Stug life, mate.
I did years ago. It's a problem. Cool. Okay. So there will, it's interesting. There's places that I've seen where people are saying, this is going to be an edition where we see nothing but armor, and it sounds like for a bit, and then not.
And that's what I said. I think we're going to see those 8 or 9. Absolutely the best ways to play bolt action. We've broken the game. It's over.
Yeah.
People are like, I'm just going to spam armor. Okay, so your armor platoon is probably going to run you, if you're doing it just a pure spam, at least half, probably close to 230 points. If I'm sat there in a mirror countering that, I'm going, okay, well, I'm going to run 5 or 6 infantry anti-tank weapons, at least 1 anti-tank gun, and then I'm just going to load up on infantry and win on objectives.
Yeah.
But then by the same token, someone can come along and go, aha, well, Marcus, you've done that, so I'm going to bring a bunch of flamethrowers and burn out all of your small teams. And then someone else goes, aha, I'm going to bring loads of HE and shell you from afar. And then someone else goes, aha, I'm going to bring loads of armor and I'm going to drive up at your HE and not care. And then someone goes, I'm going to bring loads of recce and dodge around and your armor can't get to grips with me. And then. And then,
yeah, so on and so forth. It's interesting times ahead.
Oh, it's going to be so good. Really excited.
And for our last question, we're not going to go soft. What's the bigger focus for you guys at Warlord? Is it historical accuracy, gameplay, or competitive play? Are you going to be aiming in any way to, we know the answer to this, but to restrict forces to reflect what actually happened, or open them up to give players choice and be more fun?
I'm going to give you one guess at what my answer is going to be.
Fun.
Fun. Genuinely, crucially.
Yeah.
Fun. So we recognize that everyone in our community has fun in different ways, right? And obviously they're broadly grouped into like competitive players, thematic players, pickup players, campaign players, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
We want a game that is fun for everyone. And if we've ever been faced with a decision where the options are make it more historical or make it more fun, or make it more crunchy or make it more fun, or the answer is always make it fun. Do what makes it fun.
As it should be. This is a hobby, it's supposed to be
Because
fun.
you can add in restrictions for competitive balance.
Yeah.
You can add in restrictions for thematic and scenario balance. What you cannot, or what's very much more difficult to add in than it is to build in, is fun.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said earlier, if you're running a tournament, there is nothing to say that you can't say, right, it has to be from this theatre or this structure or whatever.
Absolutely not. And that happens all the time. And we love
Yeah.
that. And I think people want to know, oh, are Warlord games going let's be honest, the 40k route, where it's all driven by tournaments and it all seems to be meta chasing? Absolutely not. By the same token, are Warlord games going to completely shun tournaments and say, we don't want you here? Absolutely not. We are here for everyone having fun. And the right way to play bolt action, here's the big secret, right? There is one right way to play bolt action. And that is the way where you and the person you are playing with are having fun. Everything else, secondary.
There you go. Absolutely. I could not agree more. And I think that's the perfect way to wrap up our chat.
There's my mic drop.
That is whatever you do with 3rd edition Bolt Action, have fun.
Absolutely. Just have fun with it. Enjoy yourselves.
That is the objective. Awesome stuff. Well, first of all, thank you so much for coming along and spending a long time chatting to me about this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I could talk about bolt action for literally hours. It's really nice actually to have more people and to just kind of come on and chat with like-minded nerds, because we kind of we'd not met before this evening, and so here we are chatting away about bolt action. It's great. It reminds me that there is a massive community out there, and then particularly so thank you to everyone that messaged in and wrote in on Reddit, because again, it reminds us that we do this stuff and it brings people joy. People have fun with the things that we do at work, and you would not believe how motivating that is, getting out of bed on a Monday morning.
I can totally believe it. It's a very special thing to do, and I think all the signs at the moment are that there is a golden age ahead for bolt action, and it's only going to get stronger. So
we think so, and we hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too. So, as I say, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time. Guys, if you have any other questions or any other thoughts, stick them in the comments. Thank you all for joining. Thank you to our patrons and our channel members for making all this possible. If you want to see more stuff from Bolt Action and from the channel in that sort of direction, say below, because we respond and we want to make what you guys want to see. So there's an idea at the back of my head at the moment about getting some of the other Dice Gods involved and maybe doing a Tale of Gamers coming into 3rd edition, getting some new players in and playing some new games. So let us know if that would be cool. But aside from that, thank you all for watching. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. And we will see you again soon. Goodbye.